Welcome to True Tears Stories. Please like this video and subscribe to True Tears Stories. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Mia had never made a big deal about her birthday. Not really. But that didn't mean she didn't care. There's a quiet kind of longing that grows in the corners of being overlooked, like a shadow that stretches a little further each year. This year, she turned 34. 8 birthdays had passed since the last time someone in her family remembered, and she had stopped pretending it didn't matter. She still made herself a cake, though. Chocolate with raspberry filling, the way her grandmother used to make it. The oven had warmed the apartment, and for a moment, the scent in the air made her feel like someone was about to knock on her door. Arms full of balloons, voice loud with love. No one did. Her phone stayed silent all morning. No texts, no calls, not even a lazy Facebook post from a cousin. Just ads, a bank alert, and one email from a coworker who didn't know it was her birthday, but had attached a spreadsheet Mia had forgotten to ask for. She sat at the kitchen table with a slice of cake and a single unlit candle. The knife next to her was clean, unused. She had cut the cake with the side of the fork. It felt less ceremonial that way, less like a celebration, and more like survival. By late afternoon, the silence had thickened into something almost unbearable. She scrolled through photos on her phone. Old birthdays when she was still living at home, still Mimi to her dad, and the center of her mother's over-the-top balloon arrangements. Back then, she hadn't needed to remind anyone. They remembered because they cared. Or at least, they used to. The forgetting hadn't started with malice. It started slowly. One year, her sister was in the middle of a divorce and forgot to call. The next, her mom was traveling. Her dad had been growing distant since the remarriage, and after a while, the habit of forgetting just settled in like a worn groove. They didn't even realize they were doing it. And that made it worse. Mia had reminded them twice in the early years. Once with a casual message, "Don't forget, my birthday's this weekend." It had led to a belated card, signed with more formality than warmth. The second time, she said nothing but left the date visible on the family calendar app. They ignored it anyway. After that, she gave up the reminders. Instead, she took mental notes. Year after year, her birthday passed like any other day. She would order herself takeout, stream a movie, and tell herself it wasn't worth being upset over. But this year, something had shifted. She couldn't pinpoint why. Maybe it was turning 34 and realizing she had spent nearly a decade waiting for people who never showed up. Or maybe it was the quiet confidence that comes when you finally stop hoping for someone to rescue you. Whatever it was, she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to let it pass unnoticed again. By midnight, Mia had come up with an idea. Something bold. Something that would force them to pay attention. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. She didn't want revenge. She wanted truth. She opened her laptop and started drafting a message, one she would send the following week. Not a birthday invitation. Something simpler, mysterious, just enough to spark their curiosity. They had forgotten her for 8 years, but this time they would remember. The message Mia sent out on Monday morning was short and strange by design. It read, "Next Saturday, 3 p.m., my place. Please come. It's important." She signed it with no details, no hints, just her name. She sent it to her parents, her sister, her brother, even her dad's new wife. All the people who had spent years skimming past her life like a headline they'd already read. And then she waited. By Tuesday, the replies started trickling in. Her sister's came first. Everything okay? Then her dad's. Is this about money? Her mom took the longest. She responded Thursday with a breezy, I'll be there. Looking forward to it. Mia didn't explain. She wanted them to come in with questions. She wanted them to feel the itch of uncertainty for once, just enough to pause whatever else they had going on and look at her fully, maybe for the first time in years. The apartment looked the same as it always did, but to Mia, it felt different. She cleaned it with more care than usual, bought new candles, rearranged the furniture. She wasn't throwing a party, not exactly, but she wanted the space to feel intentional, chosen. On Saturday morning, she baked another cake, the same one, chocolate with raspberry filling. She did it calmly this time. No tears, no secret hoping. She wasn't waiting for them to remember her birthday. She was preparing to remind them who she was. By 2:55 p.m., she was dressed in a simple navy sweater and jeans. Comfortable, but put together. The cake was in the center of the table, uncut again, a single candle placed neatly in the middle. They started arriving just after 3. First came her sister, Laura, tugging a toddler on one arm and balancing a too large purse on the other. You didn't say what this was about, Laura said, planting a quick kiss on Mia's cheek, like she was already half distracted. Then her dad and stepmother arrived, stiff in the doorway, like they hadn't decided whether to be annoyed or curious. Her mom was next, all smiles and perfume, talking about the traffic, the weather, anything but Mia. Once they were all settled, coffee poured, awkward pleasantries exchanged, Mia stood by the table. No speech, no dramatic build-up. She simply gestured toward the cake and said, Does anyone know what today is? They looked at each other, blinking. Her dad scratched his neck. Her sister furrowed her brow. Her mom smiled politely. Saturday? Mia nodded slowly. It's a week after my birthday. The room froze for a beat. Laura shifted uncomfortably. Oh, shoot, was it really last week? I thought it was next. Her dad cleared his throat. You should have said something. I did, Mia replied, keeping her tone even, for a couple of years. And then I stopped. Because it shouldn't be my job to remind my family I exist. The silence thickened. I didn't invite you here for cake, she went on, though you're welcome to have some. I invited you because I wanted you to feel something. Even just for a minute. That feeling when you're not sure what's going on. When you think you might have missed something important and no one tells you what it is. Her mom shifted forward. Sweetheart, we didn't mean. I know, Mia said, her voice firm but soft. You never meant to forget. But you did. For 8 years. No one spoke. I've spent birthdays by myself. I've pretended it didn't matter. I've cut cakes with forks, and I'm not angry anymore, I promise. I'm just done making space for people who don't notice when I disappear. Laura's eyes welled up. Her dad looked down. Even her stepmother had the decency to look embarrassed. Mia sat down and folded her hands. You all came today because I said it was important, and I hope now you understand why. They didn't rush to apologize. She didn't ask them to. That wasn't the point. The point was being seen, heard, counted. She finally lit the candle, letting it flicker for a few seconds before blowing it out herself. No one sang. No one needed to. When everyone left, they did so quietly. No hugs, no false promises. A few offered soft goodbyes at the door, half apologies, half questions they didn't know how to ask. Mia didn't chase them down with extra slices of cake. She just closed the door gently and let the silence fold around her like a blanket. For once, it wasn't the lonely kind of quiet. It was a chosen stillness, a line drawn. She stood in the kitchen a while, cleaning the mugs and plates, putting the cake into containers. She wasn't sure what she expected, if anything. Maybe just for one of them to linger. Maybe for someone to say, "Tell me more." But no one did. And that somehow made her prouder of herself. The next morning, she woke early. Not out of habit, but because she felt oddly refreshed, like something in her chest had exhaled overnight. She walked down to the little cafe on the corner, ordered her favorite espresso, and sat at her usual spot by the window. The barista, a college student named Ash, recognized her. "Miss Mia," they said with a grin, "you're glowing today." She laughed softly. "I guess I am." The sunlight touched her hands on the table. She watched the people pass by. The young couple bickering playfully. The man with 2 dogs, who always nodded at her. The woman with bright red shoes, who wore them like armor. She'd spent so long folding herself into other people's timelines, other people's comfort zones, hoping to be remembered, to be invited, to be chosen. But yesterday changed something. Not because it was dramatic, or loud, or full of tears. It wasn't. It was simple. She just told the truth and let the silence answer for them. Later that afternoon, her phone buzzed. A message from Laura. "I owe you a real birthday. Just us?" Mia smiled. She didn't reply right away. She let the thought sit for a while. It wasn't about whether she said yes or no. It was about the fact that someone had seen her. That evening, she pulled out an old photo album, one she hadn't opened in years. There were birthdays in there, captured in glossy squares, frozen smiles, crooked candles, small paper hats from a long time ago. In one photo, she was 8, missing her front teeth, grinning wildly beside a homemade cake her mother once baked with her. There were balloons taped to the wall, and a banner that said, "You're our sunshine." Mia touched the photo gently. "I was once," she whispered to herself. That night, she wrote herself a letter, a habit she'd long forgotten. It read, "To the girl they used to celebrate, and the woman who's learning to celebrate herself. Happy birthday. You're still sunshine, even when they forget." She folded the letter and slipped it into a drawer. A private gift, one that didn't need applause or witnesses. She realized she hadn't felt angry during the gathering. Not really. The pain was there, yes, but the ache had cooled into clarity. It wasn't about punishing them. It was about setting herself free from the question, "What did I do wrong?" She hadn't done anything wrong. They just didn't know how to love her properly. Or maybe they'd forgotten how. Either way, she wasn't responsible for their forgetting anymore. The next week passed quietly, but differently. She didn't check her phone as much. She didn't scroll through family group chats, looking for hints or signs. She didn't chase. And something strange happened. Her mom called. "I've been thinking," she said. "You were brave to say what you said, and I'm sorry, I really am." Mia didn't say, "It's okay." She said, "Thank you." and that was enough. A few days later, her brother sent a photo, a memory from years ago, Mia blowing out candles, laughing so hard her eyes were closed. The caption read, "I miss this version of you. Want to get coffee sometime?" She did. She said yes. Not because she needed them to make up for lost birthdays, but because she'd already made herself whole. They were welcome to join her now, but she would never again stand in the cold, waiting to be invited inside. The cafe was half full when Mia arrived. Her brother was already there, sitting nervously at a table by the window. He stood as she approached, rubbing his hands together like he used to before school plays when they were kids. "Mia," he said, "you look good." She offered him a gentle smile and sat down across from him. "I feel good." He nodded, clearly relieved she'd come, but also unsure of what to do now that she had. The silence between them felt more like a pause than a wait this time, filled with possibility rather than guilt. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, fingers toying with the sugar packet. "About the party, about everything, really." Mia took a sip of her tea, waiting. I didn't realize how far we'd let things drift. You know, life gets loud. Kids, work, responsibilities. It's like birthdays stop being birthdays and people become habits instead of priorities." She looked at him, her gaze steady but soft. "You don't need to explain everything. I didn't come here for an apology tour." He looked relieved but still restless. "Then why did you come?" Mia paused. "Because you reached out. That matters." The quiet settled again, but this time it felt companionable. Healing doesn't always come with grand gestures or dramatic reckonings. Sometimes it begins with a shared cup of coffee and the courage to sit across from someone who once hurt you. "I miss you," he said. "I miss you too," she replied. And it wasn't a lie. They spent an hour talking about their childhood, their mother, even the weird casserole Aunt Bev used to make. It was light, but under it was the knowledge that something had shifted. There was a chance to rebuild, not from scratch, but from truth. Later that evening, Mia walked home through the autumn air, her coat wrapped tightly around her. Leaves scattered the sidewalk like confetti, and she let herself feel something close to peace. When she got home, there was a card in the mail. No return address. Just her name in familiar handwriting. She opened it slowly, uncertain. Inside was a simple message. "Happy birthday. I'm sorry we forgot. Thank you for reminding us how much it mattered." No signature, but she knew it was from Laura. The handwriting hadn't changed since they were teens. Mia placed the card on her mantle. She didn't cry. She didn't feel triumphant. She just felt right. In the days that followed, nothing was dramatically different. Her phone didn't ring off the hook. There were no parades or makeup parties, but the silence had changed its shape. It no longer felt like abandonment. It felt like space, room for new things to grow. And she was growing too. She signed up for a pottery class, started walking every morning before breakfast, reorganized her living room and donated things she no longer needed. She even booked a trip for her next birthday, alone, on purpose. And each night before bed, she wrote a line in her journal. One night, she wrote, "I am not invisible." Another, "Being remembered starts with remembering myself." And on the night before her next birthday, she wrote, "I no longer wait for the cake. I make it myself." That morning, she woke to the scent of coffee brewing in her kitchen and sunlight slipping through the curtains like a whisper. Her phone buzzed. One message, then another, then more. Happy birthday, Mia. We're thinking of you today. You taught us something last year. Thank you. She smiled, not because they remembered, but because this time it didn't change her. She was already whole before the messages came in. She lit a single candle on the cake she had baked for herself, lemon with raspberry frosting, her favorite. She closed her eyes, made a wish, and let the flame flicker out. This time, she would remember. The kitchen was quiet after the candle went out. Mia sat at the table for a while, her fork resting gently against the slice of cake. She didn't feel the urge to scroll her phone again or check who had remembered and who hadn't. For the first time in a long time, the day felt full without needing to be crowded. What they had forgotten for 8 years, her birthday, her presence, had once left an ache that felt impossible to name. But naming it, feeling it, and then choosing what to do with it, that had been her turning point. The truth is, sometimes people forget. Not because they don't care, but because they've grown used to your silence, your forgiveness, your place on the edge of the room. But when you choose to step back into the center of your own life, they notice, or they don't. But either way, you've already chosen to live wide awake again. Mia stood up, wrapped the rest of the cake, and placed it in the fridge. There would be a slice tomorrow, and maybe she'd call someone to share it. Or maybe not. The power now rested in her hands. She passed the mantle on her way out of the room and paused in front of the card one more time. 8 years late, yes, but it had found her. More importantly, she had found herself. And that was the kind of birthday that stayed remembered forever.